Hello everyone, my name's Devin Davis, and I'm proud to announce the public release of a plugin that I've created that tackles what I believe to be an unnecessary weak point of the MA3 software. So, if you've ever tried making a color gradient before, you'll probably know that there are multiple ways to do it, and each way provides you with some advantages, but none of them give you your ideal full control. And now, when I say ideal, what do I mean? There are three things: speed, customization, and the ability to use the presets universally among your selection grid no matter what. So multiple fixture types, using sub-fixtures, anything of the sort. So MA3 provides you with what I believe to be three workflows for gradients. There may be more that I'm not aware of, but as far as I know, that there are three ways, and like I said, each one of them gives you your own advantages, but none of them give you the full control that you should be looking for whenever you make these presets. So let's dive into each one of these methods. Now the first one we're going to look at is the magic preset method, which I'm going to divide into two parts because there's two ways of using magic presets, which we'll get into in a second. But basically, if you've never used a magic preset before, if you select two fixtures of the same fixture type, turn them on, and then set your start and end values by using the next. So we'll say first yellow, next blue, then reset the matrix. Then if you store that selectively, so store/selective, then you'll create a selective preset over here. Now if you edit this and you turn on the magic function in the top left, X out of this, now if I select 101 through 112, then my gradient will be applied. However, there's a problem with this, which is that it only works within the fixture type that you set the preset with, because that's the only fixture type that has any selective information. So, if I were to select my entire downstage edge, turn them all on, and then try to reapply that gradient, you'll notice nothing changed. So everything of the other fixture type is still just in plain white. Now that's what I believe to be a huge downfall of this method, is that for every single fixture type, you'll have to recreate the same preset. So then we're going to take a look at a method that actually fixes this, which is using recipe presets and then making those magic, which I don't take credit for. I actually took this from Matt Wimpelberg in his video series about this, which will be linked in the description below. Basically, to summarize the points that he made in his video, is that if you take any fixture type and then you actually go down one on the y-axis and you select another fixture type, and then I've actually got three fixture types here, so I'm going to do that again for 301 and 302, and then let's store that as a group. Now this looks a little confusing at first, but I promise it'll make sense in a second. So now if we create that group and we call it magic, we'll clear it out, and then what we can do actually is create just an empty preset. We'll go into the edit setting menu, we'll press the turn into recipe button, and that will create a recipe line here. We're actually going to create another one. So for selection on both lines, we're going to make that the magic group, and then your values here, the first line is going to be your start value, so we'll make it, let's just say yellow to blue again, color blue, and then the real magic behind this is actually over here in the X value. So for X on line 1, we'll set it to 1, and then line 2, we'll set it to 2. Perfect. Now don't forget, we need to make this a magic preset. Now, if we try doing that same thing again with the entire downstage edge, turn it on, you'll notice it gradients across the entire edge. And actually this works for the strip lights as well, because we included that in that magic group. Perfect. So now we have the functionality of universal presets. It does take quite a lot of time and actually quite a lot of understanding of recipe presets and how the console works, so it's not very approachable for beginners, but it does work. Now, like I said, this method is great, but it also does come with some downfalls, which is it's very hard to customize this. Once again, we're limited to how the console actually decides to gradient between the two colors. So if you wanted to move this middle point over to the left or over to the right, you simply can't. So now we're going to look at method 2, which I personally use the most among the 3 methods as it's just super quick. But that is essentially using the align tool with the color picker. So if I take all my lights and I apply the camera perspective, and let's just say I wanted to do a red to blue, right? So we'll take it to red over here, and then we will use the less than on the align tool, and then we will take that all the way to blue. Perfect. I mean, it selectively creates a gradient across your entire selection grid, which is exactly what we're looking for. Now, the pros of this method are that obviously it was very fast, and it works across multiple fixture types, across your whole selection grid. You can slightly customize in a kind of broken way how you want to create your gradients if you're going from red to green because of how much space is left in the CIE over here. So you'll see that the farther I drag it, the more the green wants to move towards the left. But I wouldn't necessarily call this a feature. I'd say that this is more of a, unintended benefit. However, where this method falls is that you can only store these presets selectively, and if you wanted to change your selection and apply that same gradient, you would have to actually recreate it. So now if we look at method number 3, which is actually creating a phaser and then setting the speed to 0. So if we'll take my strip lights, turn them on. Let's say I wanted to go from green to blue. We'd set step 1 to be green. We'll set step 2 to be blue. We'll set a MA3 phase of 180. And then we set the speed to 0. Now you'll notice it doesn't look quite right. However, if we store the preset, then you've got your gradient. As well as this, the actual orientation is flipped, which you could easily fix by just integrating the opposite of what you wanted to do. Or I believe if you set your phase swapped, yeah. So if you swap your phase, then that'll flip it. Now, obviously the pros of this was that it was pretty quick to make. It wasn't very hard at all. And actually, you'll see here, if we go into the phaser editor and we we'll set our measure to 2, and then we change our width, you can see you can actually change how the gradient is formed, which is pretty neat. However, one of the downfalls of this is you'll see actually that the blue is still coming in. It starts coming in on the side over here. So you're not starting at a natural green, as you can see there. And obviously, if you were to store this universally, it would work across multiple fixture types. No matter what your selection is, it'll work because it's just a universal phaser. I believe this method probably provides you with the most customization. However, again, it's not ideal. As I said, among the 3 methods, the most functional would probably be using the phaser. The one that I believe to be the best and the quickest would be the align tool. But the recipe magic preset is actually really cool too, because you can update the values inside the preset as with just a macro. So if I go into this preset, you go here, you could use a macro to change this color. If we take a look at all of the pros and cons of every single method, you'll see that where one is really good, the others tend to fall down. However, I'd like to introduce you to my plugin, which I believe solves every single one of these issues. So if we I'll take my spot and my wash group, and I'll apply the camera perspective, and then I will set them to full. We're going to open up my plugin called Gradient++. So as you can see here, my plugin window is created. I'm currently on version 2.3.2, but however, I believe it will work in earlier versions. And then now if we use these UI faders, we can bring them up, and you'll see here the entire left side is brought up, and bring up the right side. And just like that, your gradient is created. There was hardly any work at all in that. It's just that simple. Now, this bias fader here in the middle will actually control how much of each color is set on either side. So now if we set this back to 50, it goes back to the middle, and then color space here, we actually have a swipe button, which you can choose your color path. So if we look here, we take a look at the color picker while we use this. As you can see, maybe if I do this, you can see that from yellow to blue, we have a straight line. And that's not ideal, because that means in the middle, we're going directly through white, a completely desaturated value, which looks quite bad, honestly, depending on what you're going for. So if we change this color space to OK Lab, and then we apply that, as you can see, we are actually curving around the white space. If you've never heard of OK Lab before, I'm not going to be able to do a great job of explaining it, so I'll leave the actual website of the creator and how he explains this in the comment section. So if you're curious into that, you can go ahead and check that out. But the basic idea is that we're using math to create more visually appealing color gradients. And if we go to our third option here, we have HSV, which simply applies our gradient across the full saturated values. Now, if you wanted to take the path along the green instead of the red, you can just take down the red by 1 point over here, and it will take the green path. It is that simple. Now, what I believe to be one of the biggest features that I haven't even mentioned yet is the ability to store presets. Now, you'll notice here that I'm actually storing a magic preset, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Just earlier, I was telling you all the reasons why you wouldn't use a magic preset. However, if we do this, let's just, for the sake of demonstration, we'll say we want this color gradient. We want to apply a bias over here so that we get more blue, and then let's store that. So what does that actually do? So if you'll see, if I select my wash fixtures and then I try to apply that gradient I just created, I can't. I'm limited by the magic functionality of the software. However, this is where a second plugin of mine that I created leverages the power of both the Gradient++ and recipe presets. So earlier when I showed you how to make a magic group, let's go ahead and delete this for now. I will slide my group spool down, and then, so here's my other plugin called the Magic Converter. So how does this work? Let's say I took, you'll notice that my wash lights and my strip lights are not working with that magic gradient that I just created. Doesn't work. Only has spot information. Now, if I take the Magic Converter plugin, press it, and then I will press the gradient that I just created, as you'll see here, we have a universal magic preset. Now, what just happened? It works. As you can see, it works just fine. Even with all the HSV and all the bias and everything, it works just fine. So how does this work? Basically what this plugin does is it creates a recipe preset based on that magic preset that we just created with the Gradient++ plugin. If you like what you see, you can download the plugin on addondesk.com. I'll leave a link in the description and in the top right corner for you to click on. I do charge about 20 euros for it. It took me a lot of effort and a lot of time to create. So if you're willing to support me in that, please do give it a quick purchase and try it out. If you have any feedback or if you have any features that you'd like to see implemented, please leave them in the comment section, and I'll go through them and I'll see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Devin Davis, and I'll see you in the next video.